Go on, join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? Now that I already got your hands up.
She's been here several times and loves it.
Really? Why? She must love you.
Yes.
Yes. I want to ask her why that, but why? Why love this place? Calming. So she's saying you need calming.
Yes.
We all need calming. That's
Yes.
how, you do this long enough, you can sit here. Yeah. What else?
Same.
Man, people keep dragging people,
I'm here for more torture.
More torture. You see that she didn't tell you about the torture, did she? It's actually funny. It's playing into what I possibly might talk about, but I might not. I don't know. Who else is here? First time, welcome. What brings you here?
This guy.
This guy.
His phone.
Yes. We always have someone to blame.
My husband.
Your husband also probably loves you, right? No matter how much he screws up. Yes. That's the problem when people are around here too much, That's why I try to know nothing about anybody. It just makes it easier. In fact, when we did the the last Women's Buddhist Leadership Program, and I made a comment, I think maybe even the first week, about I do my best to pretty much ignore everybody here. And somebody said to me, I noticed that. But imagine if, I went around the room and I was like, okay, you got that issue, you have that. I don't mean but you have that going on. That's your problem. That's your problem. That's your problem. So when I see people, you don't even exist. I mean that very seriously. You all got enough shit going on, and I don't need it in my head because I have enough shit going on. So, to me, the beauty of the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, is it's said that when he shared the teachings, that no matter what he shared and how he shared it, that everybody that was listening just immediately understood. And I think, I don't know when I heard that years ago, but to me that was always one of the most beautiful teachings, lessons, experiences, because otherwise you would start trying to tailor things and shift things to match people's own personal drama. And then this person sitting here becomes a therapist, trying to fix you and help you and heal you, right? I'm just a practitioner. Big difference. And I'm just giving insight into what rolls through my head with these things. And one has to be very careful with that stuff because as a practitioner, meaning study and practice Buddhist teachings, that's all I am. What you all make me out to be and what you all think I am, that's your mess, not mine. But for me, I know who I am and what I am, and I know what's in this every day. And trust me, you don't want what's in this every day. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. That's why I practice, right? And so we share the teachings. And for me, that's all I can do is look at what have I learned from the Buddhist teachings, how do they make sense in my head, and then share it in a way that's hopefully, applicable and accessible to those who show up. And coming back to that Buddhist kind of teaching or lesson about whatever he shared, everybody just immediately awakened. I think that's a very beautiful reminder to just stick to the Buddhist teachings. To me, they work. And people who show up to these places tend to show up because for them, it works. If people show up to this stuff and they learn about this practice and it's not working, they stop showing up. And that's a beautiful thing. You don't want to build a Buddhist space that's filled with people who don't want to practice. What would be the point, right? Notice the sign outside trying to reel everybody in. Notice the sign, period, right? We still have the cross on top. We've just done our best to confuse everybody. It's actually a funny story. When we were downtown for 10 years, we moved here 7 years ago for those who are new. So we were downtown for 10 years in a little loft space, 1,000 square feet. You walk by, it was on 2nd and Market. You walk by, there'd be a big window, a little bit larger than the one in the back there, but a big window with the Buddha in the window. And you would look in and you would just think it was like somebody's home, and you never knew that it was a temple inside. So as we were finally, after 10 years, getting ready to move out, we never had a sign, nothing, right? Neighbors didn't know we were there. We were perfectly happy with that. And when we were moving out, actually a couple people said it, but I remember one dialogue specifically, and somebody said, "Are you going to put a sign up that says you're moving?" And it kind of struck me in a funny way, and I was like, we never had a sign up that said we were here. So if we put a sign up that says we're moving, then we would really confuse people, right? But the practice is just a practice. And this actually, I will read this, and then we'll move on. You don't do this? Yeah. So it's funny because I just took a photo of this and I had thought I may come in and read this, but it was going to be in a completely different context. And then based on what everybody shared and what I started talking about, it's actually even more applicable, but in a completely different way. So this has been on the back of, for me, and wherever my kind of office space was in the temple, I've had this for probably 15 years. There was a fisherman, and this is from Sokayan, who was a great Zen master from a long time ago, centuries ago. There was a fisherman in China who, for 40 years, used a straight needle to fish with. When someone asked him, "Why don't you use a bent hook?" the fisherman replied, "You can catch ordinary fish with a bent hook, but I will catch a great fish with my straight needle." Word of this came to the ear of the emperor, so he went to see this fool of a fisherman for himself. The emperor asked the fisherman, "What are you fishing for?" The fisherman said, "I'm fishing for you, emperor." If you have no experience in fishing with a straight needle, you cannot understand this story. Simply, I'm holding my arms on my breast, like that fisherman with the straight needle. I fish for you good fishes. I do not circulate letters. I do not advertise. I do not ask you to come. I do not ask you to stay. I do not entertain you. You come and I'm living my own life. Zen Master Sokayan. And for me, that has driven this place for probably 15 years. And it ties into what I'm talking about. People come, people go. That's up to you. We practice. You don't like how we practice? Don't show up. You love how we practice? Show up. It's that simple. Now, granted, they didn't have social media when he wrote that, so it might have been a little bit different back then. But we might advertise a tiny bit and circulate stuff a tiny bit. But the essence and the heart of that teaching, I think, is really, really beautiful. Places like this are there for people who want them. And for those who are loved by the ones that they're with. So, all right, so with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. A couple things to tell you before we begin for those who are new. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? You're just going to sit and you're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable if you are on a cushion. Often helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just simply means you need to move. I'll guide us as we begin and settle into a little bit of silence. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up or remind you to come back to present moment. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting. Breathing. learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing, Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your life. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And as we all know too well, the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulty, pain, sadness. It's also filled with excitement, joy, happiness. This practice is about being with life as it arises, not escaping from it, which is what so many of us have done for so many years of our lives. Running to something or someone to fix us and heal us and make us all better. This practice is direct perception into the present moment, not escaping from the present moment. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. That's it. It doesn't change. For me, this practice is not complicated. It takes a lot of work, but it's not complicated. 2,500 years of teachings and books and languages and cultures and all kinds of stuff around Buddhism can make it seem like it's very complicated, but it's really not. It requires great effort, great diligence. And for me, I'm always, pleased to see so many people continue to show up to this practice, because if you keep showing up, what that means is you're working really hard at this. Even if you think you don't, or if you think you're not. If you keep showing up, you are, because this practice requires you, as I always say, to hold up a mirror and look back at yourself and recognize, this is where I'm greedy, this is where I'm angry, this is where I'm ignorant. And to face that. That's not always fun. I mean, how many of you want to wake up every day and look at yourself in the mirror and be like, man, I'm a greedy, angry, you know what? That's not pleasant. Now, God knows I spent years there, but not in this context. But facing that is you should be proud of that. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. We spend so much time trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everybody else. Their life is their life. Your life is yours. And this practice is learning to gain control of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And that's it. That's why it's, to me, very simple. You have to be mindful and aware of what your thoughts are, what your words are, and what your actions are. And that's all. And if those thoughts and words and actions are coming from a place of kindness and compassion and understanding, then you're good to go. If your thoughts and words and actions are coming from a place of greed and anger and ignorance, then, well, you're still good to go, but you got a little work to do. And that's it. So for me, I'll pause there. I always prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And again, to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. Say hello if you have any questions. You can put them in the chat box, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. Meditation, that was quick. Been sitting with that all morning, just like, would you just shut up already and get to the questions? Sorry, Marcy. If I'd known better, we would have just started with you.
My bad.
Go ahead.
So my question is, I run with people that speak often of having, when you in the beginning where you're like, it's not going to be mystical or magical, nothing's going to happen, but I'm talking to basically magicians. You know what I mean? They're having these really awesome experiences that they're describing when they sit. And as a practitioner, and I know that you've been in the game long enough to maybe have heard some of these stories as well, how did you go from, so I'm just a regular person sitting here breathing with my random ass thoughts. That's where I'm at. And there is a slight desire to have a mystical, magical. You know what I mean? I would like to do, that sounds lit. I want to do that. You know what I mean? How do you do that? And how do you, for me, the struggle is, as a practitioner, you're not supposed to be wanting these things, right? You just want, I'm supposed to just want to breathe. But there's a little part of me that would like to wake up and be awakened and be woke. I would like that too. I don't know if that, you know what I mean? How do you separate?
Oh, I know what you mean. I'm just letting you go.
That's my question.
I would gladly just spend the next 20 minutes listening to you ask a question and then end the class. Truly. You've been around here, what, like 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I don't even know where to start with that
And it's
question.
literally the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I sit, I'm still having the same,
Yes, you are.
experience. It's not.
Yes,
I'm not
that boring ass
person.
experience of just sitting.
Yeah.
I wish, you're just, as you said, you're just a normal ass person with all kinds of thoughts versus the magician who apparently isn't a normal ass person.
Right.
Man, there's so many responses I have to this, but let me try to pick a few of my favorites. So, to put into context for those who might be new, to practice or new here, as I've always said, I've been at this 20-something years, 22 years, every single day for 20 years. Nothing has ever happened to me.
That's disappointing.
That's disappointing to you
Yeah.
because you have some craving and desire for something to happen to you because you're comparing yourself to these apparent magicians.
Also, you
Hang on. Nope, you had your time.
Okay.
All right. The root cause of suffering, as you know, you both responded, shared, asked, and answered everything in your share, which is beautiful, and I appreciate everything you said. And you also sat with me for 2 years, so you already knew what you were getting yourself into with this question. The problem arises with you, which is what you said, is that you're craving and desiring something else. For me, meditation practice is not about achieving anything. It's actually about what we're not doing, right? I grew up an angry, pissed off person. Lots of fights, lots of trouble, punching people, punching walls, doing stupid shit to myself and to others. You know what meditation created space for? All of that to stop. I think that's pretty fucking magical. It's not my place nor comfort level to slander other people who share their mystical, magical experiences, but I would highly caution you to be very careful around people who are talking about these mystical, magical experiences that they're apparently having. And from a Buddhist lens, the great Suzuki Roshi, Shinro Suzuki built San Francisco Zen Center, and all the great Zen teachers, what is more magical than this? This is pretty magical. Just life as it is. The fact that we're able to do stuff and function and this is mind-blowing. All of this. The fact that you're even here, that all of us are even here, is mind-blowing. That's it, my friend. Second thing. There's a story from Ram Dass, and I always, tell the story wrong, but I get the same message across. That apparently in the 60s, Ram Dass and some Tibetan lamas were hanging out, doing what people did at, festivals, as they call them today, in the 60s. And apparently lots of people were taking a little bag with little square tabs in them, and they were swallowing them, And so this lama was like, well, what are you all doing? And he wanted to try what all these, other folks were trying. And apparently he took many of them, right? By the sound of all of you, you know what I'm talking about, which kind of concerns me. But he took many of them. And an hour later, went to everybody else and was like, okay, so what's supposed to happen? I wish you could see Marcy's expression. Right? The idea behind this story is that what everybody is trying to achieve with some far out there mystical, magical experience, right? This is it. And the story is that this lama, he's already there. All the crap that we all have in our heads, it just sees things as it is. No need an escape. The challenge is when we crave life to be different from how it is. The Buddhist said that there are very healthy cravings as well. Craving, desire leads to suffering, as you shared. Buddha also said that there are healthy cravings, healthy desires. The craving to suffer less, incredibly healthy. The craving to want to feel pleasant versus unpleasant can potentially be very healthy because it'll pull us out of this in a very practical sense, deep sense of depression or sadness or anger or madness or whatever crap is in your head. But if you constantly crave to run away from just what you call normal, normal ass, then you're always going to be running. So, as you've heard me say many times, I wake up every day not thinking, is today the day that I'm going to be enlightened? Is today the day that I'm going to awaken? I am 1,000% confident that I will never awaken or become enlightened in this lifetime. Guaranteed. I'm like, there. 100%. My practice is to say, can I wake up and suffer less today than I did yesterday? Can I be kinder to myself and everybody else today than I was yesterday? Can I be gentler to myself and everybody else today than I was yesterday? With this path and this practice, that's about the extent of my craving and desire. So after 2 years, you're diligent. You're here like 3-4 days a week for 2 years. You have changed. You might not see it, but your questions have changed drastically. You have changed drastically. And the deeper you can settle into that change, and the change is a lot to do with what you're not doing, as opposed to maybe things that you are doing in your life. That's beautiful. That's mystical. That's magical. You have changed your life and the life of those around you based on your practice. Yeah. So, yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
For many people that have had bad childhoods and no love in their life, and they crave unconditional love outside themselves, how can they be unattached
Not attached
to
to
that?
that. The craving for wanting. Go ahead, sorry.
The need for closeness of children, adults, anybody.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's important, first off, again, just to say for those who might be new, that the Buddhist teachings around non-attachment, and I know you understand this is just in context, the Buddhist teachings around non-attachment, right? Buddha talked a lot about not attaching. It doesn't mean you don't care, it doesn't mean you don't love, right? There was a group that came here years ago. I'd for years done groups with other religious schools, colleges, elementary schools, whatever. And it was a Christian group that came here years ago. Actually, the religion doesn't matter. It was another religious group that came here years ago. Even I already said it. And I was talking about, someone asked a question about like loving their mother, that their professor told them that Buddhists practice not attaching, so therefore they can't love their mother. I was like, man, I'm so glad you're here, right? Non-attachment is not loving. Non-attachment is actually endless, boundless, complete love for something and someone. It's not loving them. Non-attachment is absolutely loving them, but loving them for who and how they are completely. Again, I know this isn't your question, but I want to address this first. So, it is actually loving everything for who and how they are, and not attaching to this expectation that we often carry towards people. Now, I think for your question, I would recommend, this is funny, apparently I need some water. I would recommend trying to apply non-attachment and what I'm describing as this pure, absolute love towards yourself. Because if you can practice this, not easy, but if you can practice this, very often, based on your question, you said you didn't, I shouldn't even say you're asking for you. Maybe you're asking for a friend, right? So maybe your friend didn't experience that love as a child. And so they seek and crave and desire that love. As if somebody else loving us is going to fill that void that we feel we need to fill. Yet if we absolutely love ourselves completely, there is no void to fill. Other people can come into our lives and they can leave our lives. They can love us or they can hate us, right? I can't relate to not receiving love as a child. I could probably write a book on receiving too much love as a child, right? So I can't relate from that lens, but I can relate to hating myself as a child and having anger as a child and not loving myself as a child. And what I had to learn was to actually love and appreciate myself for who and how I was. And then therefore, the whole, was it Tom Cruise, the whole "you complete me" ruined us. Because then our culture is spending our whole lives thinking that somebody else must complete us. No self to complete, meaning just love you for who you are. And if you do that, the seeking and craving and desiring somebody else will decrease. But it doesn't mean that other people won't come into your life. But you're not, their love of you, your happiness, I should say, is not contingent upon their love of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As long as we're waiting for somebody else to make us happy, then we're not working on ourselves, right? Then we're working on somebody else and trying to fix them so we can be happy ourselves. We have to learn to be happy. If we can learn to be happy and not hate ourselves, then we can actually love and care for other people in a healthy, proper way. But if we hate ourselves, then it's going to be really difficult for us to share love with other people. And that's honestly one of the biggest reasons people show up here. Most people who show up to places like this don't fully love themselves. And that's not to label any of you here, but and then you're not craving and desiring anyone else to be or not be in your life. You're good as you are. And other people can take it or leave it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, we love you. What else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I guess this is maybe in regards to right speech. I was with some friends last night for dinner, a little dinner party, and gossip came up. And I caught myself running right into it, and then just saying some things that weren't very nice about someone else, and catching myself in the midst of it, and feeling totally and completely ashamed of myself, oh my God, why would you just say that? What are you doing? I ended up apologizing to the table because I brought it back up and I was just felt sick, but I don't really know where my question's leading except for that I just can't stop thinking about it now.
Yeah.
And beating myself up.
Yeah.
Because it's just a pattern that I just don't want to do, but sometimes it's just I'm not paying attention and it just
Yeah.
out.
No, great. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
That's
Okay.
it, I guess.
Great comments, thoughts, and just to repeat for those virtually maybe didn't hear it. So you were at a little dinner party last night, and you found yourself in the middle of gossip, and then you just threw your gossip into it, and then afterwards you found yourself feeling kind of shame and guilty and apologizing to the people at the table for everything you said. Yeah?
Correct.
Now, first thing, again, to put into context for those who are new to Buddhist practice, one of the teachings, and you said this at the beginning around right speech, is to refrain from things such as gossip and slander and divisive speech and those types of things. Is it necessary? Is it honest? Is it kind? Is it timely? So right speech is really important because our words really have a huge impact on people. Especially, who do we talk to the most? Ourselves. So if you can learn to apply right speech to yourself, if you can be honest with yourself, if you can be kind to yourself, if you can be gentle to yourself, then you'll stop showing up here. But we're a long ways from that, So that's first and foremost around just some brief thoughts on right speech. The second thing, Val, is to recognize that, wow, congratulations. Like, here you are. How long have you been doing this practice?
Like on and off for 6 months. Really.
On and off for 6 months. And after 6 months, you're already feeling guilty about sitting around with a group of friends gossiping. 7 months ago, and every year before that, this would have made no difference in your life. Again, this doesn't kind of address your main question or issue here. But first, give yourself some credit for realizing that maybe you shouldn't just sit around a table and talk a bunch of shit about people. Right? So, great. You realize that that's not comfortable for you. Right? One of the best teachings I heard around the precepts, especially around all of them really, but to refrain from lying, killing, harming, really from lying, from harming, from stealing, from sexual misconduct, or from intoxicants, is that they aren't things that you force into your life. They're not things like this religious dogma that says you must do this or you're whatever. The precepts are there to keep us safe and other people safe, to keep us healthy and other people healthy. And they should be things that come into our lives when we're ready for them to come into our lives, because we recognize they don't make us feel good anymore. So you sitting at dinner gossiping about whatever made you not feel okay. Beautiful. That's a very compassionate view. That makes sense so far?
Yeah.
The next step is like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
Just stop having friends. It makes it real easy. No, but in seriousness, so for me, I talk about, this comes up a lot for me, I use the term Buddhist arrogance, where when I first got into this practice, all my buddies that I was hanging out with, I was like, I don't want to hang out with them anymore. Because they're talking about this and they're doing this, and I don't want to talk or do those things. And I'm not saying you are having this view, but I was having this view of, well, I'm better than they are now. I'm Buddhist. I've been going to a temple for 3 months, so I don't do that stuff anymore, right? I just caution that, meaning it's not about abandoning friends. It's not about just leaving the people you've been hanging out with, but watching what it does to your mind. And you could sit, I sit and listen to people gossip constantly. I don't have to add to it. I don't have to participate. I don't have to judge and critique and think they're, terrible people for gossiping. That's what people do. You're all going to leave here in a few minutes, and what do you think you're all going to do? You're all going to talk about what you just listened to for an hour. So just watch what it does to you. And maybe next time you're at the same group of friends, go there and to listen to them gossip, but without judging them, without thinking they're bad people, but to notice what it continues to do to you. And that will then play out in your life in different ways, where maybe you're just gossiping about people less. Another way, and I've shared this story before, but I think it's funny. My time in the monastery, this was 11 months, but we would eat in silence. Right? So it's 20 minutes, everything is silent. And when I came back, and this is 2006, and I was telling my parents, I said, yeah, we eat in silence, for 20 minutes. And my nice, sweet Jewish mother was like, I can't imagine eating in silence, right? And she said, but I guess if you're all wearing the same thing, if you're all eating the same thing, right? And you all look the same, meaning you all have your head shaved, you're all in a robe, like everything is the same. She said, well, then I guess what would there be to talk about? So I always introduce this idea of maybe have a meal with a friend in silence. Or a loved one in silence. Not because you're angry at each other and you're in a fight and you're just scowling. What's that word? Scowl? Scowling? Is that the right word? It sounded weird. Yeah. But just to have a meal in silence with somebody. Like a pleasant meal. And see how awkward it is at first. To just enjoy silence over a meal. It's really uncomfortable. Because we're so used to just blah, blah. So... yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you.
What else? There's a question here. Hang on. I've learned to read it to myself first before I read it out loud. Hi Jeff, I suffer a lot with the ideas that someone outside me is going to bring me happiness, which has not worked out yet. Almost half a century. That's 50 years, right? What is your advice on that? Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you heard what I shared before, but it's really, I hear you on the struggling that someone, it's just a phone, don't worry, that someone outside of you is going to bring you happiness. I don't want to come off as if like other people in our lives aren't important or that loved ones aren't important. They are. Relationships, when and if you have them, are really beautiful and really can be important parts of your life to grow with people. But to seek them because you think that that individual or that relationship is what's going to bring you happiness is where it gets a little bit dangerous. And I mean, you say yourself, if 50 years you keep thinking someone else is going to bring you happiness, I mean, if you still think that somebody else is going to bring you happiness after 50 years, yes, maybe it's time to think that it doesn't work that way. And maybe it's time to think, okay, well, for the next 50 years, why don't you try to bring yourself happiness? You know, all the time and energy and money and effort and planning and everything else that you're trying to do to make somebody else happy so they can bring you happiness, why don't you apply that to yourself? And if you make yourself happy, then maybe that craving and desire will stop. Which again doesn't mean that somebody won't come into your life and compliment you, you know, and help you learn and grow and explore more about yourself and be in a healthy, loving, caring relationship, which is really beautiful. Being in a relationship can be a really wonderful, beautiful experience, but best if you actually love and care about yourself. Otherwise, it's going to be hard on both people. So, yeah, hope that's helpful. We'll do one more before we close. Question?
Hey Jeff, I've been a Buddhist for a long time, like a month.
Yeah.
And it seems like the suffering now, like as I explore, is more acute. It's like more, in some ways. And is that you feel like that's what you're saying?
Totally normal. You say the suffering you're experiencing is more acute and more frequent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally normal. You are messed up, man. You see why he loves coming here so much? You know? Here's the thing, and maybe you haven't heard me talk about this, but I do, very seriously, very early on in Buddhist practice, meaning like the first couple years, it can actually make your life a little more difficult and a little more challenging because you're, in theory, if you're practicing this stuff and holding up that mirror and looking at your stuff, you're starting to see, like, whoa, I'm the problem. The problem isn't the other person. I'm the problem. How much of our lives have we been willing to look at the fact that every problem in our life is because of us? No. You know, that whole ignorance is bliss is no joke. If we ignore what's going on, we can just float through. But when you practice wisdom and compassion towards yourself, forgiveness toward yourself, love towards yourself, you begin to see like, wow, I'm greedy, I'm angry, and I'm ignorant. Meaning I'm ignoring reality and I'm lost in my reality, which says I'm the most important person in the planet. When you start to truly unpack that and look at that, you'll see a tremendous amount of pain and suffering in your heart and in your mind that you've carried for a long time. Absolutely. But you also, in that process, my suggestion very strongly, as you've heard, is to practice compassion towards yourself, forgiveness towards yourself, patience as you work through this. You know, it's not a 6-week course, it's not 6 months and all of a sudden you've been healed by all the Buddhists in the world. It is a daily practice of mindfulness and awareness of our own crap in our head and cutting through it so we don't bring pain into other people's lives. Because that's the reality of what we do, right? When we are experiencing tremendous pain, other people have to deal with that. And so the idea of looking at our suffering really being a big part of working on ending our suffering so others can benefit from that. Because if we're in tremendous pain and suffering and we cause tremendous pain and suffering in our own lives, then other people have to deal with that. So this practice is to help us cut through our pain and suffering so others are, so it's easier for others to deal with us. Because if nobody's told you yet, you're not the easiest person to deal with. Does that make sense? Yeah. And again, in theory, the kinder and gentler that we are towards ourselves, we can then have that kindness and gentleness towards others. And for me, that's one of the biggest reasons that we practice. Because nobody deserves to suffer from our suffering. Let's keep our own suffering to ourselves, at least as we work through it, and not dump it on everybody else for them to deal with it. So, all right, so I'll close with that. We'll join palms. And the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist practice and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on led by different folks from different Buddhist traditions. Every Thursday, 4:30, we do a food distribution program. I still think it's probably the best thing around here. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed them to people who sleep on the street. So anytime you think your life totally sucks, feed people who sleep on a sidewalk, and it'll definitely put things into perspective. Other than that, Eric, do you want to do an announcement? We have a social sangha event tomorrow.
Sure. Tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. we're meeting at the Stats, and then the
Shi,
thing.
Fang, Shi. Repeat after me. Shi, Fang, Shi, Fang. There you go. Temple.
Also known as the Google shows as the.
You're going to confuse people. Shi Fang Temple. Yeah.
Well, Google shows it.
I know.
Whatever. They are hosting a Buddhist birthday event tomorrow at 10:30, so we're going to walk over there from the Stats. It's literally across the street. And there's a hour-and-a-half ceremony for the Buddhist birthday, and then after that, they're having I guess like a lunch, a food fair, a veggie food fair. And so Mary is one of the sponsors, so I assume maybe we'll get some good but yeah. So 9:30 tomorrow at the Stats, we're meeting ahead of time and then walking over a little bit before Tuesday.
You're talking about Lestats.
9:30 at Lestats is a coffee shop on Park Boulevard. So if you want to meet at Lestats, you can meet at Lestats. Oh, the one right here. Yeah. There's also, if you go to our website and go to Social Sangha, you'll see all the info. Yeah. Thanks all.
Thank you.